Some of you will have found on your cushion a slip of paper with some words on it. So that is a mantra in Tibetan, which we'll be chanting later on. There weren't enough for everyone, but don't worry if you've not got one, because we'll be joining in. So you can just put that. It's always a danger giving people bits of paper, because then you want to gaze at the paper. But you can just put that aside just now. It's in Tibetan, so unless you can speak Tibetan, you wouldn't completely understand it, but we'll be doing that later. Okay, good. So what I'm here to do is to, really begin our seminar on creative symbols of Tantric Buddhism. We had a sort of preparation week last week with Jnanavacha, who set that up. Well, do come in, there's a space down here. Yeah, thank you. Good, great. So again, Jnanavacha, it was kind of week -1 last week, and Jnanavacha set up this whole seminar, and I'm going to officially start it tonight. Actually, next week there'll be a break in the seminar, but it's for something even better. So next week at the Monday class, we've got Suryagupta, the chair of the centre, giving the Mandala evening. So that's a once-a-year keynote talk from Suryagupta, and she is our chair. So so do come along to that. So the seminar then will continue the week after that. And so do try and come to all the weeks if you can. At the same time, we'll try and make each one stand alone as well. But the best thing of all would be if you can come every week. So what we're looking at is symbols of Tantric Buddhism. So Tantric Buddhism is kind of roughly synonymous with a phase of Buddhism called the Vajrayana. It's not exactly, but for all intents and purposes, it's roughly synonymous. So there's our 3 great phases of Buddhism. This, by the way, is what Jnanavacha covered last week, so this is a bit of a recap. So there's 3 great phases of Buddhism. So there's the early Buddhism, so the time of the Buddha and the first few hundred years after that. And the early Buddhists were particularly concerned with ethical practice and with Buddhist psychology, so really working closely with the mind. And then the next great phase is called the Mahayana, and the Mahayanists really introduced story and myth. And the particular thing about the Mahayana was that they saw that practice couldn't be for oneself alone, that it's part and parcel of Buddhism has to have another regarding aspect, that it doesn't make sense to think of like my development without thinking of the development of others. So that's where the whole notion of the Bodhisattva came from. And then the third great phase is the Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism, which is concerned with direct experience. So these are historical phases of Buddhism, and it's not incorrect to think of them like that, but it's probably more useful to think of them as different attitudes we can adopt. And in a way, all the different attitudes have got value, So it's not that we have one and not the other. We do need to practice ethics and work on our mind, for example, as the early Buddhists did. We do need to have this other regarding aspect. We do need to try and understand what was meant by direct experience. So we can see them as different attitudes or different modes as well that are present in our practice all the time. So given that Tantric Buddhism is concerned with direct experience, last week what we started to look at, what do we mean by direct experience, and particularly what stops us experiencing things directly. And we explored this for quite a long time last week. So just to remind us what stops us from experiencing things directly. We saw there was kind of 3 levels of this. And first is the stories that we just habitually tell ourselves about our experience. So, we habitually, whenever something happens, we habitually kind of get into, why is this happening to me? This always happens to me. I knew this was going to happen, type of thing. And in telling ourselves those stories, we sort of bias and distort our experience, yeah? Do people sort of recognise that? I'm sure people recognise those stories we tell ourselves. And it's not that there's an experience and then there's a story we tell ourselves. The very stories we tell ourselves about experience feed into the experience. They modify the experience we're having. So that's a very kind of common way that all the time we're not having the experience we're having. We're telling ourselves a story about the experience. And then the next thing we do is we attach labels to experience. And what we saw was, it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with that. We have to label things. We have to, I have to say, could you bring me a chair, or could you, I don't know, or, come in the door, or go and get the tea or something. We have to put labels on experience. But the mistake that we make is that we take it literally. We think the label is the thing, yeah? And in that way we create a sort of barrier between ourselves and the experience. And I'm reminded of the poet Wallace Stevens, and one of his poems is called something like not the idea of the thing, but the thing itself. So we're trying to get closer to things in themselves, but what we're doing all the time is we attach labels, and then we believe the label really is the thing. And that actually causes us suffering, because it means that we fix things, especially our internal experience. We sort of say, oh, I'm so tired, I'm not going to make it through the evening or something. So we immediately stick a label on something, take it literally, believe it. And you see how then that actually affects the experience we're having, yeah? Does that, yeah? So that's the second thing we do. So first of all, we tell ourselves stories about our experience. Those stories usually will fall into either hankering after more of the thing or not wanting it. And then the next thing we do is we label our experience, and then we believe those labels are the thing, We take the label too literally. We don't see that that's just a sort of handy, sort of practical thing we do. We take that literally. And then at the deepest level of all, the sort of deepest mistake we make, this deepest mistake is made at a pre-conscious level, is that we divide the world into a real me in here, having an experience, and things out there that are really happening, yeah? Sort of independent of the moment of experience. So we think there's a real me in here and a sort of real world out there, and you're just sort of walking into, like you were, walking into a theatre or something. So we create this artificial divide, and we totally believe that because we're doing it at a level that's not yet conscious, yeah? We're doing it below the level of consciousness. So in a certain sense, we can't help doing it. It is something we're doing. It's part and parcel of being an unenlightened human being that we do it. So we're not sort of culpable for doing it, but it causes us, all our suffering is caused by that artificial divide that we make, that sort of illegitimate divide that we make, and it's basically consists of a real me in here and a real world out there, a real me having an experience and real experience to be had, yeah? we make that division sharply and we believe it. Because we do that below the level of consciousness, it's really hard to undo. It can be undone, and enlightenment consists, you could say, in undoing that. So it can be undone, but it's hard to do it because you can't consciously do it. You can't. It cannot be done through concepts. You can't think yourself out of that bind, as it were, that we can't think ourselves out of it. We can't argue ourselves out of it. Every now and then we do get flashes of stepping out of it, or at least glimpses of stepping out of it. For example, when we're sort of surprised by beauty, for a moment we step out of it. That's why that experience is so kind of, because we for a moment we sort of forget to be a sort of solid changing me, kind of having the experience. We're just in our experience, yeah. And it usually comes as a surprise, and we can never repeat it, So we will all probably have glimpses of stepping out of that or being surprised out of it, usually an experience of beauty. And it's usually got an aesthetic quality, either beauty of nature, beauty of art, or beauty of real communication with another person, for example. And it will come as a surprise, yeah? Do people recognise that? You're out of it for a moment, you forget to do all that comparing yourself with other people. You sort of positively forget to be a me in a positive way. Yeah, it's just irrelevant. You're just kind of in the moment of beauty. So it's good that we've all had glimpses of that, because it shows you that something is possible. Yeah, but then you'll also know that you can't then make it happen again. You can't think, I'm going to try and do that thing again. You can't will it into being. So because we can't argue ourselves into sort of undoing this mistake, and we can't do it through concepts. What Tantric Buddhism does is it makes tremendous use of symbols, yeah, and this is what we're going to be exploring over the next 6 weeks or so, particular symbols that are used in Tantric Buddhism that can sort of bypass the conscious level, that can speak directly to us, yeah, if we allow them to. So I'm just going to say a little bit about symbols in general, and then I'm going to explore one particular symbol this evening. So Bhante Sangharakshita gave a whole series of talks on Tantric Buddhism that have been published in a book called Creative Symbols of Tantric Buddhism. And one of the key things he says is a symbol isn't a sign. So a symbol isn't the same thing as a sign. In other words, a symbol doesn't stand for something that could be known in some other way. A sign is simply something that stands for something, yeah? Like, I don't know, this fire exit sign up there. You don't even need to read that. You just, you kind of, you just take on the fact it's green and white. You sort of know what it is. That's a sign. It's just shorthand for something. But a symbol doesn't stand for anything that could be known in any other way. And just to take that a little bit deeper, you could say that another way of looking at this is, rather than a symbol standing for something, a symbol is that thing as it appears under a certain set of conditions. And those conditions are the way we look at it, yeah? Or the way we apprehend it. If I say look, but it could just as easily be one of the other senses. A symbol isn't necessarily visual, it could sort of appeal to any of the senses. So the way we look at something, the way we apprehend it is the key condition. And I mean, this ties in with what Maitreya Bandha was saying in the announcement about just the absolute central importance of the mind. And especially if we've been on a retreat, if we meditate at all, we'll know that, well, just how our mind's affected. We'll know, for example, that when we go on retreat, things, other people even, well, just start to appear more beautiful, don't they? We start to see more world, actually. It's not just that things are more beautiful, it's that we see more things. I know going on solitary retreat, it's almost like I feel like every day more flowers seem to appear. You know, it's almost like meditation almost makes flowers grow in a way, because you start seeing more and more. They look more beautiful, and they seem more meaningful. Yeah? Meditation has that effect, doesn't it? If you've meditated for any length of time, even if it's your first few meditations, you might already be noticing that when you step out, just for a moment, things seem more bright, more illumined, more meaningful. So the condition our mind in affects the way we see the world. Just the same as when you're in a very bad mood. I'm sure you're not in very bad moods a lot of the time, but sometimes I get in bad moods, and the world just seems more closed, everything suddenly seems less beautiful, even more ugly, doesn't it? Even so-called beautiful things, you can't see the beauty of them, or you don't even want to see the beauty of them. Sometimes you just, it's almost like you want to turn away from the beauty, whereas in a more positive, expansive, meditative state of mind, you see the beauty, and it's almost like your mind is ready to receive the beauty, and receive the meaning. So yes, as we meditate, things appear not only more beautiful, but they're of heightened significance. So I think what this is pointing to is we're trying to bring about a new mode of experience. This is what Buddhist practice is. In our practice of ethics, in our practice of meditation, we're trying to bring about a new mode of experience. It's not that we're trying to set up a theory about things, it's we're trying to engender a new mode of experience, where we can see things more deeply and more meaningfully. So you could say that everything could be a symbol. Everything is capable of taking us deeper. It's not that actually things are divided into symbols and non-symbols. Anything can be a way of deepening one's relationship with the world. Anything can be a route into seeing things more as they really are, without the labelling, without the story, without that false divide. Anything, in theory, is sort of capable of being the route into that. So it's not that literally there's some things that are symbols and some things that are non-symbols. At the same time, there's some things that are more likely to sort of be the key or be the door. So it's not entirely subjective. So some things are more likely to be, and that's what we're going to do over the next 6 weeks. We're going to explore some symbols that are more likely to open that door to meaning to us. And we'll be exploring them, and our job really is to just allow our imagination to be affected, allow the symbols to speak to us, as it were. if we're doing that, it's like what we're doing is we're sort of letting ourselves see beyond the sort of ego-based significance of things. Usually if we're really honest, everything we look at is, if we're really honest, has got a bit of, well, what's in it for me, you know? Every time we look at something, even something beautiful, we're surprised by beauty for a moment, and then we think, oh, you know, can I get that thing, you know? We sort of want it. So we're trying to see sort of underneath that, yeah? So, and again, you know, we've all had taste of both. We've a taste of both sides of that, yeah. You know, just every time we're sort of touched by the wonder of, say, the sun rising, for example, or the moon rising, we have a taste of that, yeah? We've a taste of sort of disentangling it from me, and what can it give me, how can it benefit me. Yeah, so that's what we're going to try and do. We're trying to see if we can just keep allowing these symbols we're going to be introduced to speak to us in that deeper way, and we're going to try and listen. We're going to try and be susceptible to their meaning. And if we can do that, what we're doing is we're allowing our imagination to work properly, our real imagination to work, not fancy, not just fancy or fantasy. We're allowing our real imagination to sort of work and come alive more. Imagination is a faculty, just like any of our other faculties, and we can sort of grow it. We can grow our imagination. Okay, so that's by way of introduction to what we're doing. And now I'm going to introduce you to our first symbol of the series. And the symbol I'm going to introduce you to tonight is the symbol of the Dakini, the symbol of the Dakini. So I'm going to introduce you to this symbol, and I'm hoping that you're going to meet the Dakini somehow this evening. So some of you may be familiar with this symbol, some of you this is going to be new to you. So I'm particularly excited if the symbol of the Dakini is new to you. Actually, maybe I'd just ask you, who will it be? Who's the symbol of the Dakini new to this evening? Oh, good, that's great. It's great to be new to things. So the Dakini, well, it's a very, very, very rich symbol, and in fact, within the symbol of the Dakini, there's lots of other symbols. So the Dakini is a female figure. The Dakini is a figure, a female figure, and the first thing about her is her name means something like sky dancer, sky walker, or sky dancer. So here immediately you've got a symbol within a symbol. So you've got the symbol of the sky. So from time to time I'm just going to ask you what these symbols mean to you. Obviously there won't be a chance to hear from everyone, but so maybe I'll just ask if what the sky as a symbol. So what does the sky as a symbol say to you? I'll ask you to speak quite loudly because I'm a little hard of space. Okay, so space. And what does space say? Because space in a way is a symbol as well, isn't it?
Expansion.
Expansion. Yeah. So the sky, space, expansion. Anything else about the sky as a symbol?
Freedom.
Freedom. Yeah. Clarity. Peace, yeah.
Infinite.
Does someone say infinite? Yeah. Good, infinite, okay. So great, so we've got the sky as expansive, infinite. It's also indefinable in a sense, isn't it? It's impossible to say where it begins. You know, if you go out and look at the sky, you can't quite say where it begins. So you can see that someone who dances in the sky has got all these qualities as well by connotation, yeah? So the Dakini is, so she herself is a symbol of freedom, of limitlessness, yeah? Of infinity somehow. Sort of unobstructed, yeah? She's depicted as dancing in the sky. So she is a symbol of enlightenment, but she's very rarely, I don't know if ever, shown meditating, yeah? So she's shown like dancing or walking in the sky. She's shown, when you see pictures, she's standing, she's not sitting, she's standing, often with her legs like quite kind of wide apart, or sometimes with this very interesting gesture of one leg sort of bent and one leg curved in, and it's a stylized bow and arrow, and she shoots arrows at you to captivate you. Yeah. So again, there's a lot we could say about that. Okay, so let's go through some of the other attributes of this skywalker Dakini. So she's naked. She's naked. So what is nakedness a symbol of? Let's have some other people. So nakedness is a symbol.
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Purity.
Purity, yeah.
Truth.
Truth.
Fearless.
Fearlessness. So who said fearlessness? So why is it a symbol of fearlessness?
She doesn't care what you think.
Yeah. So, any others? This is all good, yeah.
Nature.
Okay, yeah, so yeah.
Innocence.
Innocence, so we've got innocence and purity.
Freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
Exposure.
Exposure. So what do you mean by exposure?
Just there, it's there. There's nothing hidden.
There's nothing hidden, yeah. So interesting. So Jenny said there's nothing hidden. So all this is great, isn't it? This freedom, this not caring what people think, and we'll come back to that. But let's come back to this exposure, nothing hidden. So what if there's nothing hidden? Let's see, where am I going with this? I'm definitely trying to draw something out. I'm just quite interested in what Nico said about vulnerability. So if there's nothing hidden, are you vulnerable or are you invulnerable?
You're being honest.
You're being honest, yeah. So that's interesting, because I might argue, I kind of can guess why you said vulnerability, but I might argue that if there's nothing hidden, in a certain sense you're invulnerable. Because I wonder if like having things to hide is the very thing that makes you vulnerable. And knowing that you've got like, a secret somebody might find out or so on is the thing that can make one fearful. Whereas actually having been completely naked, I think in the case of the Dakini, her nakedness is because she's realised that in a sort of sense, and it's a counterintuitive sense, that to be naked is in a sense the best defence, because you've got completely nothing to hide. It's counterintuitive because we think, the best defence is to, have a suit of armour on or something. We have to make a barrier between ourselves and the world. But actually, the Dakini has the complete realisation that actually, in the end, there is nothing to defend. And there is nothing to defend. That at enlightenment, what is realised, that all we were ever defending was a pattern of defensiveness. And it just goes like puff, it just kind of goes on a puff of smoke. You realise there was nothing to fear, yeah? So I think this is the nakedness of the Dakini, of realising that actually there never was anything to defend. Yeah.
So it's strength as well.
Yes, a strength, yeah.
Because you can't do without armor.
Because you...
You can do without armor. If you can do without armor,
Yeah,
it's strong.
it's strong, yeah, because you don't need that armour, yeah, so it's strength. So I think her nakedness is strength, yeah, and freedom, yeah. She's got this long black hair and it's completely dishevelled, yeah. So what's that a symbol of?
Nature.
Nature, yeah. And I think maybe what we already touched on of completely not caring what people think of her, yeah. So she's not bound by convention, but at the same time, and this is really, really important, she's not unconventional either. So why do you think I say that she's not unconventional? She's not a rebel.
Because she doesn't define herself against convention?
Yes, yes. Who said that? Sorry.
Me.
Yes, so say it again, she doesn't...
Well, she doesn't like define herself against convention.
Yes.
That would also be like an equal straitjacket.
Brilliant, yeah, perfect. So did everyone hear that? So she doesn't define herself against convention, that would be an equal straitjacket. Can you just say a little bit more about that? About being an equal straitjacket? That's really, really good, yeah.
I'm not signing up.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all probably like know that a little bit from our own experience.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you're thinking, oh, I'm rebelling against something, that thing still has a hold on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You're
Yeah.
still fighting against something.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
still fighting against something, whereas I guess she's like transcending
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that
yeah.
dichotomy and just being really free.
Yeah, so that's it. So that's very, very good. So I really liked when you said if you're defining yourself against something, for rebelling against something, that thing has still got a hold on you. So that's why she's not unconventional. So the long black dishevelled hair is, we have to remember, it is a symbol, yeah. So we won't become more Dakini-like just by not combing our hair, do you know what I mean? Or whatever the equivalent is. So in a sense, you could look completely conventional and be more Dakini-like than somebody that looked completely unconventional. Do you see what I mean? Because it's an inner, like not bound by that thing of what do people think about me, one way or the other. Can you imagine the freedom of that? That's the other thing we always come back to. We always come back to what's in it for me. That binds us, and we always come back to what people think about me. Am I approved of? Am I disapproved of? Do I fit in? You know, we torture by that, you know, whereas the Dakini is completely free. She never thinks, do I fit in? You know, neither does she think, do I not fit in? It's just no longer an issue. That's completely not an issue. That's just wonderful thought, isn't it? So she's wearing ornaments of bones, yeah, of human bones. So that's the only, she's naked, but she's got these ornaments of bones. So I think what that says is she's adorned with what usually frightens us, yeah? She's adorned with what usually frightens us. She's got, in one hand, she's got this chopper, this huge sort of chopper, and in her left hand she's got a skull cup, so a cup made of a sawn-off skull, human skull, filled with red liquid that looks like blood, but it's actually nectar. And I think these hands, I've been thinking about this more and more, that every time you see a Buddhist figure, their hand gestures are very, very important. And often, well, always I think the hands are in relation to each other. So you've got the figure of the classical meditating Buddha on the shrine. The hands are obviously in relation with each other. But this Dakini's hands, a chopper in one hand and this skull cup in the other. I was reflecting that although they seem to be very different, they're actually in relation, because the chopper showing us that insight is actually a destructive thing. Insight, wisdom, isn't something we add on to ourselves. It's something that comes about when we've seen through all illusion, even chopped our way through it. And then the skull cup filled with this nectar, it's the nectar of bliss. And she's just drinking it in ecstasy, and that's the ecstasy when you just sort of dive into the void and experience reality. So you could say you've got spiritual death and spiritual rebirth, hand in hand, literally. You've got the destructive, you have to die to all your old illusions, chop through them in order to experience the bliss, the nectar of bliss. And you won't experience the nectar of, you can't have the nectar of bliss without the chopping through, but the chopping through is in order for spiritual rebirth. Yeah, this ecstasy of when you've just dived into the void. Yeah, so that's what she's holding in her two hands. And then she's completely brilliant red. Yeah, she's completely brilliant red. From like head to toe, every part of her is red. So red, of course, is the colour of love, of passion, of total involvement. And what this is speaking of is she's not afraid to feel all her emotions, but particularly love. It's so amazing, isn't it, that we often hold back from all our strong feelings, but even the ones that are very, very positive. We sort of somehow think, oh no, like that's enough, it's too much. But do people get that? You almost sort of shy away from that strength of feeling. So she's just completely involved in life, yeah. And so she's not afraid to feel. And the Dakini is the esoteric Sangha refuge. So the Sangha is a spiritual community, as we know. So she stands for the energy that's released in real communication. When you really, really communicate with someone, when you really both communicate from your depth. And there's just there's a sort of spark, isn't there? And that's the Dakini, yeah. And spiritual communication, that is. There's different kinds of spark. They might not always be the Dakini, but the Dakini is when there's really, really deep, truthful, honest, inspiring communication. And it's interesting to me that she's the esoteric Sangha refuge, because I think what that teaches us is that the Sangha is a living thing, that we're creating it all the time by the quality of communication with each other. And we're creating it, or we're not creating it. The Sangha isn't something that's kind of given to us on a plate, as it were. We have to create it, and it's difficult to create it because, well, other people are difficult, we're difficult, human beings are difficult, some of the time at least. So we have to take that into account when we're creating the Sangha. We can't expect it to be perfect. If we do, we will be let down. What we can expect is that it's something we have to create together. We create it through rejoicing, we create it through forgiveness, we create it through apology, we create it through communication. We don't create it through expecting it to be perfect. That's very static. That's not the Dakini life. Yeah. And then the final symbol I want to talk about in relation to the Dakini is one final thing that she's wearing, and she's wearing a mala or a necklace or a garland of skulls, and it's enormous, this garland. It's kind of right down almost to her toes, this huge this huge garland of skulls strung together. So again, you've got symbol within a symbol. A mala is a symbol in itself. So a mala is a set of beads. It's interesting that these symbols are quite universal, and probably every religion and every culture even, or many cultures, have got this, a string of beads. I know growing up as a Catholic, we had our rosary beads that you meditate upon. I still remember the joyful mysteries, the sorrowful mysteries, the glorious mysteries of Catholicism as you went round your rosary beads. So it's a symbol in itself. It's a set of beads that you chant mantras on, even make prayers on. And given that it's strung together, well, that's very interesting. That in a way it's endless, and I think it's a symbol of continual engagement. Yeah, because you keep chanting your mantra on it. You keep engaging. Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, also he holds a mala, and it's said that each bead for Avalokiteshvara represents a being, a suffering being that he wishes to save. And I think that's really beautiful, because you can see, because it's a mala, that suffering is endless. So there's endless suffering. You never come to an end of suffering beings, but you never come to an end of engagement, because Avalokiteshvara just keeps going round and round this mala. So suffering is endless, but engagement, all we can do is keep engaging. Yes, so she, the Dakini, is wearing this mala of skulls. So that's very particular again, that the mala is of skulls. And I think another symbol of when you're wearing something that's strung together is that you wear what you've conquered, yeah? I was thinking of the other story from early Buddhism. It's another story. People who can remember the other story of someone else who wears a mala of what he's conquered?
The serial killer.
The serial killer. Who said that? Yeah, the serial killer. So what? Just briefly, what's he wearing a mala of?
All the people's fingers that he's killed.
Yeah. So he's called Angulimala. So that's a story of from early Buddhism about a serial killer who does convert to the Dharma, and every victim he chops off their finger and strings them into a mala, and so he's wearing what he's killed, what he's conquered. So the Dakini is wearing a mala of human skulls. So what she conquered?
Ego.
Who said that?
Ego.
Ego, yeah. So can you say a little bit more?
Well, just as simple as, sort of breaking through the self to ultimate reality.
Okay, so that's very interesting, that image of like breaking through the self, but why is it a garland of skulls? Why isn't it just... So there's a whole garland. Traditionally a mala's got 108, so why is it a whole garland? You're definitely on the right track, but maybe somebody else can say, why is there a whole garland?
Is it in connection to death?
Well, you could say it's in connection with death, but it's death in a particular way. So in a way you could say the death is the death of all our previous selves, yeah? So in a way there's many selves, yeah? Because there's all our sort of previous lives. You could say our literal previous lives, but you could say all our psychological conditioning that'll take all these different forms. So in a way in the spiritual life we sort of die many times. And when I say die, I mean that positively. We die to our old habits, and then we die again to the same old habits, and then again and again and again. So we have to keep dying to our old selves, yeah? And then, so again and again, so there's a whole garland of what we die to, yeah? Again, again, we go on retreat and we think, oh crikey, like here it is again, the thing that I thought I'd overcome. And we have to, on an even deeper level, we go forth from it, we die to it, yeah? And I think it's an amazing image because she, the Dakini, is wearing it, but remember she's bright red and she's kind of energy embodied, so it's a bit like you've got an image of just this surge of energy surging up through everything that we've died to. So when we die to all these old habits, old psychological conditioning, old kind of behaviours that harm us, it's not that there's nothing left. Sometimes we can think that. I remember I used to feel that, and possibly still do. I thought, God, if I died to all my sort of anger and irritation, God, what would be left of me? You know, I so identify with that. I can think, what would be left of me? But actually, what's left is this brilliant red flame upsurge, the Dakini. Yeah? So I just think, yeah, as I say, it's an amazing image of she's surging up through this thing that's garlanding her, these skulls. So every skull is like a life, as it were, and every life is an old self that we've gone forth from, that we've died to. Yeah? So I'm going to leave you with that as the final image. So you've got this brilliant red figure dancing in the sky, totally free, totally naked, totally free of all conditioning. She's garlanded with skulls. She's the upsurge of energy that remains when we've died to all our egotistical habits. Yeah. And what I thought, I think we'll do this as much as we can in this Tantric series, is end in a ritual way. So we've just got 5 or 6 minutes left. So we're going to end with a mantra that will be probably new to most of you, and that's what's on your paper. So all of you haven't got it, but don't worry, you can join in. And it's the skull garland mantra, yeah? It's the skull garland mantra. So Steph's going to start us in this mantra, and we're going to chant it. Yeah? So don't worry if you haven't got it. Just join in. It's only a few syllables.